Hello and welcome back to the Darth Magog channel. I'm your host, the Dark Lord of the Apostates, Darth Magog. Jehovah's Witnesses are one of the most insular, secretive religions on the planet today. As a result, there's not a lot known about them and there's a fair amount of misinformation about the group, and I've decided I'm going to correct some of that with a little good old-fashioned research in my experience as a former ministerial servant in the organization. So today we'll be doing our first fact check on Jehovah's Witness critics. We would be honored if you would join us. Today's video that we'll be analyzing is one from Pastor Richard Lorenzo Junior. He's a controversial figure in the religious YouTube community, but we won't be discussing his beliefs or takes. You can do that on your own in the comment section down below. I'm focusing on this one because this is one of the pastor's more popular videos and is the most likely to be clicked on. So I figure I'll do my due diligence and see just how accurate it is.
So we're downtown Orlando, and I see some Jehovah's Witnesses posted up over there. We're just going to go over there and interview them.
Pastor Lorenzo is doing what's called a cart crash here. Allow me to explain for new viewers. If you're already familiar with Jehovah's Witness preaching methods or just genuinely don't care, feel free to skip to the timestamp on the screen. Jehovah's Witnesses are well known for their door-to-door preaching, but one of their newer methods that they're using is called cart witnessing. It's a practice that involves a few Jehovah's Witnesses placing literature on a cart rather than taking it to your door and going to urban or suburban areas. They stand next to their carts and offer literature to people who approach the cart with interest and often direct them to jw.org for additional information. It's basically running a mobile kiosk. A cart crash is a form of protest in which an activist will confront a Jehovah's Witness at their cart and engage them in conversation. These conversations can be in the form of a genuine question and answer, or in the case of Pastor Lorenzo here, it's presented as preaching in interview format. Other members of the community have reviewed this cart crash before, and as a whole, I'm not a big fan of them, so we'll skip over this portion of the video. I'll reference it as needed. I don't think it goes anywhere. The witnesses and Lorenzo were relatively kind-natured to one another, but ultimately end up talking past each other. I don't think anyone accomplished their goal. Okay, here comes the fun part of the video where we take Pastor Lorenzo's assertions and do a fact check. So we'll take every one of his statements and apply the label fact or false, and maybe technically, for the gray areas in between.
As you guys can see, they really don't know the Word of God.
First assertion, Jehovah's Witnesses don't know the Word of God, and to this assertion I will apply fact. It's a little subjective, but in recent times there's been a clear change in the religion's focus. Rather than its scholarly roots, now Jehovah's Witnesses are more reliant on jw.org, as Pastor Lorenzo references later in the same comment. You can even replicate his feed in the video where he's directed to jw.org to address media concerns.
They try to directly translate it with the KJV, but it's different. They added to it and took away.
Okay, I'm stretching a little bit, but I'll rate this claim also. Claim 2 is that Jehovah's Witnesses have added and taken away from the Bible. And that is fact. The Jehovah's Witnesses did historically use the King James Version of the Bible prior to the release of their own translation, and used that as a cross-reference during the initial run. Though I could deduct points for the New World Translation actually being much closer to the American Standard Version, I'll let this stand. It's early in the video after all, I'll cut our pastor friend some slack, but don't get used to mercy.
And it's a new religion. It's actually, it was established in 1870 by a man named Charles Taze Russell.
Next, Pastor Lorenzo tries to assert that Jehovah's Witnesses are a new religion, and that is fact. 3 for 3, Pastor. Well done there. Jehovah's Witnesses were indeed founded in or around 1970. There's a bit of a debate on the specific date, so I'll let that slide for now. He even got good old Chucky Russell's name right on the first try, so Lorenzo gets full credit for his answer. Jehovah's Witnesses will try and debate you on this, claiming that they're the restoration of true worship from the first century Christians, and that biblical characters like Joseph, Moses, and King Solomon would be amongst their fold. But the objectively provable fact is that the Jehovah's Witness religion is only 154 years old, younger if you count the fact that JWs are a reformation of the Bible student movement, but that is another story.
And those who followed him listen to this, were called Bible students, and he began writing a series of the millennial dawn.
Round 4. Jehovah's Witnesses were first called the Bible students who studied Pastor Russell's Millennial Dawn series. And that's fact. Well, technically. I can see Pastor Lorenzo has his phone on hand with his notes, so I'm going to ding him half a point on the fact check. So Bible students is indeed the correct original name of Jehovah's Witnesses, so that's factual. And they did study Pastor Russell's book called Millennial Dawn. That was the first in the series. Unfortunately, the series itself is actually called Studies in the Scriptures, but I'm willing to offer half credit because he got the name of the first volume, Millennial Dawn, correct, and was right about the volume count at the time. Honestly, I'm impressed the name Millennial Dawn has made it this far, so if you personally want to give Pastor Lorenzo a full point there, I won't hold it against you.
Now listen to this. The Watchtower Bible and Tract Society was founded in 1886.
Okay, here we go. Pastor Lorenzo thinks that the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society was founded in 1886, and that is a certifiable false. Pastor, you better get your fact checkers to proofread your notes before you hit the camera. Zion's Watchtower, the predecessor to the modern Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, was actually founded in 1881 by Russell, and it was reorganized into the Watchtower that we know today in 1896. I'm certain this was a clerical error, but this is one he got wrong. Now, it's true that Studies in the Scriptures became one of Watchtower's flagship books, so a little credit there to end on an objective note.
They called them Russellites, and after his death in 1916, there was a 7th volume, the final volume called The Finished Mystery.
Assertion 6 about the Bible students is that they were called Russellites, and that is fact. While Russellites weren't the formal name of the congregation that would become Jehovah's Witnesses, they were casually known as such. Bonus points for having the individual title again for the last volume of Study in the Scriptures, which was printed posthumously for Pastor Russell. Well played, Pastor Lorenzo.
So this guy named Charles Taze Russell added and took away from the Bible and created his own version.
Here's a fun one. Charles Taze Russell made up his own version of the Bible called the Jehovah's Witness Bible. And for number 7, that is false. No, Charles Taze Russell didn't make his own Bible. While the Jehovah's Witnesses do have their own translation of the Bible, and I promise to address that in a future video, it was not made by Charles Taze Russell. In fact, Jehovah's Witnesses used the King James Version of the Bible up until 1950 when the New World Translation was published, over 30 years after Pastor Russell's death. The New World Translation took about 3 years of work by a mostly anonymous committee starting in 1947. I'll give Pastor Lorenzo a little credit. There are some changes in the New World Translation that you don't see in other translations of the Bible, mostly to suit Jehovah's Witness doctrine. But to say that Russell was the one that made it up specifically is false, even if I'm nitpicking, which, let's be honest, I am.
So Jehovah's Witnesses, they go against the deity of Jesus Christ. They don't believe he's God.
Lucky number 8 for the claims made by Pastor Russell. Jehovah's Witnesses deny the divinity of Jesus Christ, and that particular claim is, in no uncertain terms, fact. Jehovah's Witnesses deny the Trinity and the deity of Christ on a doctrinal level. Pastor Lorenzo further asserts that the witnesses believe Jesus to be the human form of Michael the Archangel, which is also correct in Jehovah's Witness theology. Any other biblical scholar will tell you that Michael and Jesus are distinct entities in the doctrine, and while scholars might argue whether or not Jehovah's Witnesses have a basis for denying the Trinity or not, the fact of the matter is, this claim is correct.
They believe only 144,000 people will be saved. If you ask one, Jehovah's Witnesses, are you going to be saved? They'll tell you they're not sure.
Assertion 9. Pastor Lorenzo claims that Jehovah's Witnesses only believe 144,000 people are to be saved, and that claim is, well, technically true. I don't know what specific branch of Christianity Pastor Lorenzo represents, but this is really an incompatibility with his theology and Jehovah's Witness doctrine. What Jehovah's Witnesses believe is that 144,000 specifically chosen Christians, what they call the anointed, will go to heaven when they die. In most Christian religions, and presumably in Pastor Lorenzo's as well, this would mean that they're saved, whereas in Jehovah's Witnesses, going to heaven is actually more work. The chosen anointed 144,000 are allegedly selected to become king priests in heaven with their spirit brother Jesus, aka Michael the Archangel, whereas your typical Jehovah's Witness won't believe that. The typical Jehovah's Witness sees saved entirely differently. Saved to a JW would mean that he or she is safe from destruction in Jehovah's holy war called Armageddon, where the world governments, the devil, and his supporters will all be destroyed by Jehovah, Jesus, and their heavenly army. The saved survivors of this war are foretold to live forever in a tropical paradise earth for the rest of eternity. Though a Jehovah's Witness doesn't determine that a single action will save them, as they believe in faith being dead without works, though they're saved only by grace, somehow, meaning they're never entirely sure if they've met their God Jehovah's standard. Sorry this one took so long to explain, but it's one of the stickier parts of JW theology. I'll give Pastor Lorenzo half credit here, just on the merit that he was technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, but also technically incorrect, the worst kind of incorrect.
They're very religious. The religious spirit is very condemning, very downgrading. They get very quiet.
And the final claim that Pastor Lorenzo makes is more of a critique and review, but luckily is supported by evidence. He says that the Jehovah's Witnesses are very religious, very strict, and very passive rather than passionate in their beliefs. And though it is subjective, we can still say that is indeed fact. Jehovah's Witnesses are, as a community, very beholden to rules and regulations. There are certain things they can wear, certain ways they can speak, certain activities they can participate in. Even their worship is very prescribed and sterile. Rigidly structured meetings, specific talks and teachings, and an invasive social structure. Lorenzo's video demonstrates this very clearly. The woman at the cart doesn't speak and avoids being on camera. Luckily, the pastor and cameraman are respectful of her wishes, so I'll give a smidge of extra credit there. But the witness woman, a sister as they call themselves, falls into line behind the men at the cart because witness women aren't permitted to teach. The JW brothers redirect the pastor and his team to the corporate information department and won't speak individually about their beliefs while publicly representing the religion. With the video evidence on hand that's very easily replicatable in other cart crashes, I can comfortably call this true. Right then, XJW agents, let's tally up the final score. So out of 10 main claims that Pastor Lorenzo makes about Jehovah's Witnesses, we've come up with a final score of 7 being certifiably true. Not half bad, really. If you want to give him a little extra credit for the weird little things he brought up, like the changes to the New World Translation, or having a full title of Millennial Dawn, you can call this fact-check an 8 out of 10. So ultimately, it falls into the good category. Regarding the video itself, you can watch it and decide whether it was worth it for Pastor Lorenzo to confront the witnesses that day. I personally don't think it was very productive, and the Good Pastor's video supports this. Ultimately, all he did was trigger the witnesses' meekness response in the face of his apostasy, meaning they quietly ignored everything he said, as is their training. Ultimately, the trouble with cart crashes like this is that typical Christian doctrine is incompatible with JW theology, and therefore not especially helpful in waking up Jehovah's Witnesses, not from the outside at least. And while I agree that there are issues with the religion on a doctrinal level, my larger concern with the witnesses is their treatment of members, the rampant abuse of children, the indifference toward spousal abuse, the neglect of the elderly, and general lack of public good that the religion does despite getting millions of dollars in governmental support and tax breaks every year. But those are just my opinions, XJW agents. What do you think? I'd very much like to hear your assessment in the comments down below. And remember, agents, the elders may be watching you, but Darth Magog is watching the Watchtower.